You ever see a moment so stupid, so utterly careless that it replays in your mind like a bad commercial stuck on loop? Yeah, this is one of those moments. It was supposed to be a feel-good day, a charity event, free food trucks, music, kids laughing in the streets of a worn-down neighborhood that hadn't seen fresh pavement in years. The kind of place where hope feels like a luxury item and ball games in the alley are the only therapy some of these kids get. And then he showed up. Ethan Royce. Tech genius. App king. The face of a startup that went public and blew past $1 billion before anyone could even pronounce its name right. You know the type. Designer beard, sunglasses worth more than your car, that smug kind of rich where you're either inspired or want to punch them. Sometimes both. But to be fair, this wasn't a villain walk-in. He was there for good reasons. His foundation had sponsored the event. He arrived with a camera crew, smiled for the drones, and made the kind of speech where half the crowd nodded and the other half didn't bother listening because the barbecue line was moving. Then came the moment that changed everything. A few local kids had started a pickup soccer game on the field behind the stage, dusty ground, sagging net posts, shoes optional, just laughter, sweat, and dreams flying with every kick. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan wanted to prove he wasn't like those suit-clad billionaires who kept their shoes clean and their hearts colder. He walked onto the field. People noticed. Some started filming. One of the volunteers handed him the ball with a joking, "Let's see what you got, superstar." Ethan grinned, puffed up a little. You could tell he thought this would be a highlight reel moment. The rich guy showing the kids he's got moves too. One kick, one smile, and boom, viral gold. Only, he kicked it way too hard, not oops, hard. I mean full body wind-up, goal from midfield. What was he thinking hard? The ball shot like a cannon straight into the chest of one of the smaller kids on the field. A boy who hadn't even been looking, just turned at the wrong time. Smack. He flew back and hit the ground with a yelp that cut through the music, the laughter, everything. Silence followed, sharp and immediate. You could see people hesitate, unsure if it was a joke or just bad luck. Until the boy didn't get up. A few nervous laughs echoed from the back, the kind people make when they don't know what else to do. But those laughs died real fast, because the kid, maybe 11 or 12, was crying now. Real tears, the kind that gut-punch you. He clutched his knee like it was on fire, and his face was twisted in a kind of pain that doesn't lie. People started rushing in. A woman, his mother, came screaming. Medics were called. Ethan stood frozen, one foot still raised like he hadn't finished the kick, like even his body didn't believe what just happened. And the cameras? Oh, they caught every second. The angle, the aftermath. The millionaire looking helpless while the boys screamed on the ground. The ball rolled to the side, forgotten. But that sound, the thud of it hitting that child that stayed. None of us knew the boy's name yet. But we all knew this. Something had just broken. And it wasn't just his leg. His name was Diego. 12 years old, big brown eyes, fast on his feet before that day. He used to play barefoot, claiming shoes slowed him down. His friends said he was born with a soccer ball at his feet. Coaches, even visiting ones, said he had the instincts of a pro. What nobody knew, at least not until the accident, was just how much that dream mattered to him. See, Diego didn't just want to play professionally. He needed to. For him, soccer wasn't a sport. It was a rope ladder out of a life most kids only survive, not live. He and his mother, Rosa, lived in a 2-room apartment above a laundromat. She worked 2 jobs, nights cleaning offices, days at a diner. No father in the picture. Their electricity bill danced on the edge of red every month. And yet, despite the cracks in the walls and the noise of the city, their home had something rare. Hope. Every evening, Rosa would sit by the window with sore feet and watch Diego practice in the alley, using 2 trash cans as goalposts. He'd shout imaginary commentary, pretend he was in the World Cup finals, sometimes cry when a play didn't work out. But he never stopped. He used to whisper, "One day, Mama, I'll get us out." So when the accident happened, when Ethan's kick collided with Diego's knee like a sledgehammer, what shattered wasn't just bone. It was everything. At the hospital, doctors worked fast. MRIs, ultrasounds, more jargon than Rosa could absorb. When they finally sat her down, the words felt like bullets. Torn ligaments, severe trauma, maybe never fully heal, unlikely to compete again. Rosa didn't cry in front of them. She just nodded, asked if her son would walk, asked if it would hurt. They said yes to both. Then she walked into Diego's room and saw him lying there, leg wrapped in braces, IV in his arm, staring at the ceiling with a silence far too heavy for any kid to carry. That's when she cried. But she did it quietly, like she always had. She held his hand and said, "We'll get through this." And Diego, God help her, just nodded. No tears, no anger, just a vacant stare like someone had stolen the script of his life and replaced it with a blank page. And then came the cameras. What started as one blurry video clip online turned into a wildfire. Millionaire knocks out kid at charity event became a meme. People edited in slow-mo explosions, added sound effects. They thought it was funny. They didn't know about the knee, about the dream, about the way Rosa checked behind her for reporters before slipping into the hospital each night like a ghost. Even worse were the questions. Why was a rich guy playing with kids in the first place? Did he do it on purpose? Is she going to sue? Nobody asked how Diego was feeling. Nobody asked what the doctors said. And Rosa? She didn't have time for lawsuits or press. She had bills, she had her son, and in the back of her mind, a terrifying truth she didn't dare say out loud. What happens to a boy when his dream dies before he gets a chance to chase it? Ethan Royce had weathered storms before. He'd survived IPO chaos, lawsuits, digital leaks, competitors trying to rip off his platform pixel for pixel. He was used to headlines, scrutiny, critics with loud opinions and short attention spans. But this was different. Because this time, the target wasn't his company, it was him, personally, visibly. His name trending not for brilliance, but because a 12-year-old lay in a hospital bed thanks to his carelessness. The clip made it to late-night TV. Some hosts added laugh tracks. One popular YouTuber even edited the video with dubstep drops and slow-mo graphics. Millionaire KO's kid, charity match gone wrong. In the early days, Ethan tried to laugh it off. "People will forget in a week," he told his team. "It was an accident." His PR people didn't laugh. They moved like a crisis response unit, fast, efficient, emotionless. Post an apology, vague but empathetic. Offer to cover medical expenses, quietly of course. No interviews, no appearances for a while. Let the noise pass. And Ethan, he let them handle it. He signed the checks, nodded at their strategies, went back to what he knew, pitch decks, new apps, quarterly targets. He buried himself in work, convinced this would fade like every other scandal in tech. But the silence followed him. His office, once buzzing with ideas and energy, now felt sterile. Every pitch meeting began with a subtle tension. He couldn't scroll without seeing his own frozen face on someone's thumbnail. Protesters started appearing outside his company's events, small groups at first, holding signs with things like "Diego deserved better" and "Justice, not pity." He'd duck out back exits, pretend not to see, pretend it was normal, but the dreams wouldn't let him. It started with the sound of the kick, that thud, over and over in his sleep, sometimes followed by a child's scream, sometimes just silence, that horrible, unbearable silence after the ball hit. Then Diego's face started showing up, not the face from the viral video, not the crying boy on the field. This was the hospital version, eyes wide, dazed, lips trembling, like he wasn't sure whether to cry or stay strong. In his dreams, Diego never said a word. He just looked at Ethan like he was still waiting for something. Ethan tried to drown it out with noise, more interviews, bigger product launches. He even bought a new car, a custom electric supercar, limited edition, the kind that made headlines just for existing. But it didn't work, because one morning while walking past a newsstand, he saw the headline that finally stopped him cold. Kid hit by tech. CEO refuses to quit. Still believes in his dream. It was a local newspaper, small time, not even trending online. But there on the front page was Diego, still in a hospital bed, leg in a brace, holding a soccer ball with shaky hands. No bitterness on his face, just determination. It made Ethan feel something he hadn't felt in years, not guilt. He'd already buried himself in that. This was worse. It was shame. And shame doesn't go away with money or PR or silence. Most people expected Diego to give up. Doctors said he'd be lucky to walk without a limp. Coaches stopped calling. Even the neighborhood kids stopped asking about soccer when they saw the wheelchair. The dream, by all accounts, was over. But Diego didn't cry. Not in the hospital. Not when the casts came off. Not when he was told, "You'll need a brace for the rest of your life." Instead, he asked for resistance bands and a whiteboard. The hospital staff didn't know what to make of it. One nurse told Rosa, "He's different. Most kids just want painkillers and cartoons. Your boy's building a training plan." And he was. Day by day, inch by inch, Diego started rebuilding. Not the knee. Doctors had already warned him the damage might be permanent. But everything else, his arms, his core, his focus. He trained like he was still going to play, still going to win. He didn't care what the chart said. In the rehab center, while other patients groaned and gave up, Diego pushed. He watched hours of game footage, took notes, drew plays. When the therapist told him to take it easy, he asked if she'd ever seen Lionel Messi. He was told he was too small, Diego said. Didn't stop him. He was 12, going on 30. When he went home, Rosa found him studying videos of disabled athletes, Paralympians, adaptive soccer leagues, wheelchair basketball. She offered to help. He told her, "Help me find people who said no and did it anyway." Soon he was volunteering at a local community center. Not to play, he couldn't even run yet, but to coach. He wheeled himself to the sidelines, clipboard in hand, shouting strategy at kids who were twice his size. They listened. Not because he was loud, but because he cared. He made them better. He made them believe they could be better. And then quietly, a local journalist noticed. Her name was Leah Ortiz, mid-30s, scrappy, underpaid, writing human interest stories for a paper most people used to line bird cages. But she saw something in Diego no one else did. Not just a tragedy, not just a headline, a fight. She started coming to his practices, taking notes, recording interviews. The first story ran with the headline, "The Boy Who Refused to Stay Down." It didn't go viral, not yet. But something shifted. People in town started recognizing Diego again, not as the boy who got knocked down by a millionaire, but as the kid who was still fighting. Teachers told Rosa that younger kids were drawing pictures of Diego in wheelchairs holding trophies. Strangers left sports magazines and protein bars on their doorstep. And Ethan Royce? He didn't comment, but Diego knew he'd seen it. He didn't say how, he just knew. And deep down, he didn't need revenge, didn't even need an apology. He just needed to prove that no one, not even a billionaire's mistake, could steal his future. By the time most people saw the cracks, it was already too late. Ethan Royce's empire had always looked bulletproof. His startup-turned-giant had embedded itself into every device, every workflow, every corner of digital life. He was the golden boy of Silicon Valley, part Elon, part Jobs, with a dash of social media charm and an army of followers who swore he could do no wrong. But guilt is a slow poison. And Ethan had been drinking from that cup for months. At first, he told himself he was just tired, overworked, distracted, maybe even depressed. But it was more than that. His instincts, once razor-sharp, had dulled. He started skipping key meetings, ignoring emails, making impulsive decisions that baffled his board. He pulled out of a massive partnership deal at the last minute, invested heavily in a product that bombed before it launched. Behind the scenes, his team whispered, "He's not the same. He's unraveling. He hasn't been the same since, you know." But Ethan didn't care. He stopped taking calls, avoided the mirror, avoided sleep, and worst of all, avoided responsibility. The viral storm around Diego had died down, replaced by newer, louder outrages, but Ethan still saw him, on billboards, on screens, in his dreams. He still heard that sickening thud echo in the background of every conversation, every press event. Then came the investor meetings. At first, they were polite, then cautious, then brutal. One by one, they pulled out. Funding dried, projects froze, stocks dipped, and then the real storm hit. An investigative journalist dug into one of Ethan's early ventures, an app that had silently harvested user data without permission. A scandal buried years ago suddenly resurfaced, but this time no one rushed to defend him. The goodwill was gone. The headlines flipped. Golden boy no more. CEO under fire as past haunts present. Royce empire on the brink. And through it all, Ethan did what he always did, retreat. He holed up in his mansion, curtains drawn, voice assistants unplugged. The silence was louder now, and lonelier. For the first time in years, he wasn't surrounded by advisors or fans or flashing cameras, just ghosts. One night, too tired to sleep, Ethan opened his laptop. A browser tab was still open, Leah Ortiz's latest story on Diego. There was a video embedded at the bottom, an interview, simple setup, no lighting crew, no fancy graphics, just Diego in his wheelchair sitting under a cracked basketball hoop. His voice was soft, measured, older than his age. "I don't hate him," he said when asked about Ethan. "Accidents happen, but it's what you do after the accident that matters." Then he smiled. Not a smug smile, not a sad one. A hopeful smile. "I still believe in kindness," Diego added, "even if it hurts." Ethan paused the video, and for the first time since the kick, he cried. Not tears of frustration, not anger, just raw, unfiltered sorrow. Because in that moment, it became crystal clear. The boy had lost almost everything, and still found a way to give. And Ethan, he had everything, and managed to lose himself. Ethan Royce disappeared. No press release, no scandal, no paparazzi chase through the airport. He simply vanished. One day he was a tech mogul, CEO of one of the most powerful startups on the West Coast. The next, his office was empty, his social media wiped, his house dark. Whispers floated, burnout, breakdown, bankruptcy, but no one knew the truth. Only Rosa would later recall the moment. It was a quiet Tuesday. Rain drizzled on the rusted rooftops of Diego's neighborhood. Rosa was walking home from the pharmacy when she saw a black sedan parked at the corner. Nothing flashy, just a car that looked out of place. The man who stepped out looked thinner, older, his beard longer, his face bare of the smugness the news cameras once loved. No entourage, no bodyguards, no flashing lenses. It was Ethan. He didn't knock on their door that day, didn't even introduce himself. Instead, he went to the local community center, the same one where Diego now coached. He walked in like any other volunteer, filling out a basic form. Name, Ethan Royce. Occupation, former. Skills, project management, fundraising, good with tools. Availability, every day. Nobody believed it at first. But he kept showing up, sweeping the floors, fixing broken bleachers, painting over graffiti, quiet, focused, unassuming. Then, one day, Rosa got a letter, handwritten, no return address. It said, "Ms. Rosa, I'm sorry it took so long. No press, no lawyers. I won't bother you or Diego, but I want to help in a way that means something. I've sold most of what I had. Diego deserves better than what I left him with. So do many others. Thank you for raising someone stronger than I ever was." She didn't tell Diego right away. Not because she wanted to hide it, but because she knew actions meant more than words. And Ethan's actions had just begun. Over the next few months, anonymous donations started flowing into a local fund, not flashy, not suspicious, just steady help. Then construction began, first slowly, then with serious backing. A block away from Diego's practice field, an abandoned factory lot transformed. Bulldozers cleared rubble, architects came in, workers built walls, windows, ramps and fields. By the time it opened, the plaque at the front simply read, "The Diego Center for Every Child Told No." It had everything: adaptive training equipment, classrooms for tutoring, physical therapy rooms, indoor soccer arena with adjustable goals, a scholarship wing for young athletes. No mention of Ethan, no donor wall, no branding, just Diego's name. And Diego? When Rosa finally told him the truth about the letter, the car, the name on the form, he didn't say anything at first, just stared at the center through the bus window on the ride to practice. Then, quietly, he said, he didn't have to do that, but he did. No bitterness, no triumph, just understanding. Because sometimes redemption isn't a speech, a check, or a public apology. Sometimes it's showing up, getting your hands dirty, and doing the work without anyone watching. Years passed. The Diego Center grew into something no one could have predicted. What started as a small rehab facility turned into a national model: athletic recovery, mental health support, tutoring, mentorship. It drew in kids from neighborhoods just like Diego's, kids who had been told to sit still, told they weren't strong enough, told number. But when they walked into that building through those wide glass doors, past the mural of Diego coaching a game from his wheelchair, they saw something else. Yes, and Diego was always there. He walked now, not perfectly, not pain-free, but enough. With a brace, a slight limp, and the same determined eyes he'd had at 12. He had traded dreams of pro soccer for something wider. He was a coach, a mentor, a speaker who didn't like microphones but used them anyway. He taught kids the plays, but more than that, he taught them what to do when the game doesn't go the way you trained for. Ethan never returned to headlines. He lived in a small rented place a few blocks from the center, woke up early, cleaned the grounds, repaired equipment, helped kids with their math homework. Some knew his name. Most didn't. He never corrected them. One afternoon, after the final summer camp scrimmage, the field was emptying out. Coaches were packing up gear. The sun was low, painting long golden streaks across the grass. Diego stayed behind, alone. He picked up a ball that had rolled near the benches and turned it over in his hands. Ethan was nearby, tightening bolts on a loose goalpost. Diego didn't say anything. He just looked up. And gently, without wind-up or force, he nudged the ball across the grass. It rolled slowly, bumping along uneven patches of earth until it stopped right at Ethan's feet. Ethan looked at it, then at Diego. Their eyes met, and then no fanfare, no press, no crowd. They both smiled. Not the kind of smile you pose for, the kind that lets something go, the kind that says, "This is the moment we move forward." Ethan kicked the ball back, just as gently. The two stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Because there was nothing left to say.